All right, let's try this again. This usually cuts me off at about 10 seconds. Let's see if we can get past the 10-second mark, and looks like it's going to work. All right, so this is Beth Phillips. I tried a Facebook Live a couple of times yesterday, and I thought today I would just give you some basic information about the private tutor option of the Pennsylvania homeschool law. First of all, it's available to Pennsylvania certified teachers only. It doesn't matter what level you're certified in. It doesn't, there's some disagreement about whether Act 48 continuing education requirements apply, but the Pennsylvania Department of Education agrees that you don't have to worry about that. I think the Homeschool Legal Defense Association disagrees. So the question is, why would you opt for the private tutor provision rather than the traditional filing an affidavit and proposed list of objectives? And the main benefit is that you don't have to get an evaluation at the end of the year. There is not a testing requirement in grades 3, 5, and 8. Let me think. Although students in a private tutoring program are subject to the same health services requirements, there is no provision in the law that you have to provide evidence of it. And if you're filing an affidavit, I advocate that, quote, evidence, your affidavit statement is sufficient, but there, again, is some disagreement about that. So let's stick to the private tutoring option requirements. So what do you have to do in order to begin to homeschool under this option? Number one, you have to provide a copy of your Pennsylvania certification to the school district. Secondly, you have to provide a criminal history record. So currently, I think there are 3 required. Those can be found either on my website, pahomesschoollaw.com, and there should be links to those different agencies. I think one is the Child Welfare Clearance, another is the Pennsylvania State Police Clearance, and I think the third is fingerprinting. I don't know if that's administered through the FBI or some federal agency. But as long as those are current, you can just file that along with your teaching certificate to the school district of residence. So there have been some questions about whether, if you are qualified as a private tutor, whether you can tutor other children. So the law restricts the private tutor option to the children of one family. So if you're going to register as a private tutor for your own children, you can still instruct children of another family, but their parents or their qualified supervisor, somebody who would qualify as a supervisor, who should be a legal guardian or a custodial parent, they would have to register their own children under the 24 Pennsylvania Statute 1327.1, which requires an affidavit, a proposed list of objectives, and those children are subject to an evaluation, and testing in grades 3, 5, and 8. So just to make that clear, you can still instruct them, but they cannot be registered as under the private tutor option. I'm trying to think of other questions that have come up related to the private tutor option. We can talk a little bit about the fee or other consideration requirement. In the past, the private tutor option has been interpreted not to allow parents to tutor their own children. But that has recently, I guess in the past few years, the Pennsylvania Department of Education is admitting that that's no longer valid, a valid interpretation. And this was mainly interpreted that way, that parents could not, because of the requirement that the tutor gets a fee or other consideration. This was, they were saying, husbands and wives can't, exchange or don't exchange money. So, or however it was interpreted, but that's generally not considered good law anymore, or a valid interpretation of the law. And the thing is the law doesn't require anybody to reveal what a fee or consideration you're exchanging in any setting. So if I'm a private tutor and I'm going to be instructing children of another family, it's none of the school district's business what our either fee arrangement is or exchange arrangement is. Maybe we're just you're gonna watch my 2 little kids while I instruct your bigger kids. But there's nothing in the law that requires disclosing what the arrangement is at any time. So that's the status of that. If you have teaching credentials from Pennsylvania, then you can tutor your own children under this option. And a lot of people do that successfully. Another benefit, I think, is that nothing in the private tutor provision requires annual filing. In other words, when you file an affidavit because you're not a certified teacher, you do that by a certain date every year. The first time you do it, you have to do it within 2 weeks or before the home education program commences. And in subsequent years, you have to do it by August 1st. But under the private tutor option, it's sufficient to file the copy of your teaching certificate and your criminal history record just once with the school district. And then at the end of the year, the parent provides written assurance that the instructional requirements have been met. Now, even the regulations don't say that that has to be annual, but since the instructional requirements are annual requirements, 180 days of instruction within the year, I read that, I interpret it as the written assurance should be filed once a year. And it's just a simple letter written by the parent acknowledging that the children in the private tutor program have met the instructional requirements, and you file that with the superintendent. So, unless there are questions, if anybody has any questions, let me see. This is the first time I'm doing this, so I'm gonna try to figure out how this works. I'm clicking on a comment. Oh, that's just a like. Okay, so I guess the comments will show up on the side if somebody has a question. And I can see that there are 4 people watching. Hello. I'm so psyched that this is working now. I tried it 3 times yesterday and it wouldn't work. And I'm sorry that I actually wasn't prepared for it to come on because I got kicked off so many times. Hi, CJ and Dacia. It's a nice name, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's freezing up here in my office. I have a new office in the attic, and it's freezing up here, but I'm trying to keep warm. And there was another question on the Pennsylvania Homeschool Support Group about how to, what the legal requirements are if you want to have a group of kids in your home. But the homeschool law doesn't have any provisions regarding that, the legalities or reporting, or I view that more as governed by home daycare rules. So if you're interested in that, you should look into those regulations. And I think that it would be, the other thing I mentioned is that that's sort of between you and the other parents. But anyway, what I wanted to apologize for was that I didn't have, anything like formally prepared to talk about this issue. So I kind of rambled about it. There was one other thing that I was thinking of that might be relevant. No, I can't think of it. There is an important issue. If you're going to proceed under the private tutor option, when the homeschool law was changed in 2014, one of the major benefits to homeschooling parents is that diplomas issued by parents and then signed by the 12th year evaluator have the same rights as a high school diploma issued by any school in Pennsylvania. And that mostly is for admission to state schools and state aid and grants through the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agencies. Before 2014, you had to go to the superintendent of your district, and they had to sign off that the basic graduation requirements were met and that a diploma printed by the parent was valid. So the law changed that, but that only applies to parents who file affidavits and list of objectives, so who proceed under 1327.1. It's not available under the private tutor option. So what I'm telling parents who have high schoolers is to file as a private tutor up until the year before their last year. Some homeschoolers graduate early and meet the basic graduation requirements early, but in the last year of high school, file under the traditional, or not traditional, but the other way, with an affidavit and a proposed list of objectives. And you'll still have to have an evaluation, which the 12th year evaluator would just kind of review the transcript that you will have prepared if your child wants to go on, and if you're interested in a diploma, they review the transcript and validate and verify that the basic graduation requirements were met. They'll sign it, and you don't turn that into the school. You would just turn in the evaluation certification that the requirements in that given year were met. Whatever, that the appropriate education has occurred for that year. That's what you submit to the school district. The diploma is for your own use. So if your student needs a diploma for whatever reason, for college or the military or for some other, pursuit. So since a parent-issued diploma isn't available to private tutors yet, that's what I'm suggesting, that people still rely on the private tutor option until the last year of high school. And a lot of people meet the high school requirements by dual enrollment or going to community. So it's no more burdensome from a practical standpoint. You study the same way, you meet the requirements the same way. It's just a difference. I view it as a difference in paperwork. So hopefully that helps. And if you have any questions after you watch this rambling video, you can write them in the comments. Here, I'm going to try to figure out how to publish this on my page. It does it automatically. And then I'll try to post it in the Pennsylvania Homeschool support group, and then see if there are questions in it. Hopefully there aren't too many questions, but I know this was pretty quick and pretty disorganized. So you should be able to post comments even after it's published, I think. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm glad it worked. Hopefully I can cover some other topics in the weeks and months to come. I'm thinking about doing this like once a week, or maybe more. Maybe it's a quicker way to answer questions. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope it helps. Happy New Year.